Welcome to this chapter of the St. Andrew Society of Detroit's Oral History Project. This project was the undertaking of the Charles S. Lowe Memorial Library Committee to capture members' recollections of the society. Recorded in January of 2018, these are the memories of Scott David, Society Past President.
Well, it's funny, it wasn't really a family tradition with us. I always suspected I was Scottish. My grandfather's name was Graham Leslie, so I always assumed we were Scottish, but we would go to the games occasionally from down at the fort and also at Livonia when they first moved up there. My wife knew she was Scottish. It was her family tradition. Her grandmother, in fact, assumed that every little Scottish girl could dance a fling, which is not true. Flings are very difficult. My granddaughter actually is a competitive dancer. So she said, well, I want to join the society. So I said, well, let me check into my heritage too. I think I am Scottish, but let me check. I'll join with you. And she said, nope, I'm joining. And she joined. So she joined about 6 months ahead of me. In those days, they had twice a year where members could become members and be sworn in. So she joined, and then my heritage came through, and we confirmed it. So then I joined in, I think it was January of 2002. We got very head over heels involved with the society. I volunteered right away to work in the area of the games for the vendors. So I did that for a couple of years, and then I was asked to join the executive committee as second vice president. So I did that. I joined, held that office for a year, then first vice president, and then president for 5 consecutive terms. And during those terms, we instituted a lot of things. We carried on a lot of traditions my predecessors had done. Peg Dunlop, being a past president, had the Toys for Tots. She brought that in, and that continues to this day every December. We bring the Marines in and give them a lot of things. But we had other members. Kathy Hasse, you've interviewed her. She started a group with her and 3 of her kindergarten classmates. They started an event called the Shower of Love. And they do that for Children's Hospital for clothing for the kids. So we incorporated that into a meeting. So during my 5 years' time, generally speaking, we tried to do a charitable event at each meeting to where we would give to somebody, a homeless shelter that another member, George Boyd, supported. And again, Shower of Love, Toys for Tots, we continued. We collected books for the Free Press Reading Wagon, I think they called it, to where they give the books away. So we tried to do that every meeting to give people a reason to come. We never pressured for everybody to do everything. Whatever grabbed your attention, whatever had your passion, bring the books, bring the clothing, bring the toys, whatever it was. So I tried to do something every month. We instituted sending material overseas to the troops. And I took a lot of pride in the fact during my 5 years in office, we sent in excess, I figured out, of over 4 tons of material over to the troops. I was very proud of that. We support our veterans very much so here. I was very proud of my service to the society over the years. The building came in under my watch. That's a funny story there, too. So we get the money willed to us, and I had the bright idea before we even had the building that I wanted to go to St. Andrews Hall downtown and buy the front doors off the old building. So I called up the St. Andrews Hall. I talked to the manager, and I didn't tell him that because I thought, okay, he's going to look at me like I'm nuts and not want us down there. So I did tell him the truth. I said, we just acquired money. We're looking to purchase another facility for our new hall. I said, but I'd like to come down there and tour and kind of get a feel for the original St. Andrews Hall and see what we could incorporate. The whole time in my mind, I just wanted to get my foot in the door and buy the doors off the guy. So a bunch of us meet up down there, and as soon as I pull up, and it's down on Congress Avenue downtown, I pull up and I see aluminum doors on the front of the building. I'm like, oh man, what a waste this whole was the thing. So we walk in, we take a little bit of a tour, and I very casually asked the manager, whose name was Tony. I said, hey Tony, whatever happened to the old wood doors on the front of the building? Oh, they're up in the hallway just sitting there. Really? So I said, well, I'll tell you what, I'd be interested in buying them. So he says, well, I don't know what the owners will do of the property. He, again, just being the manager. So I said, fine, talk to them. We're going around the tour, and I see a bunch of schoolhouse lamps stored in a closet. And I said, I'll buy those too. So he says, all right, well, I'll talk to the manager and whatever. So a couple of weeks later, he finally calls me up. And he says, yeah, they're willing to sell it. He asked me how much he would give. And I said, I'll tell you what, I'll give you $600 for the doors and just these bulbs here in the room we're sitting in being interviewed, for those of you who can only hear. So fine, I agreed. I buy the doors. I go down there with my vehicle. I pick them up and bring them back. Then now I've got to get them restored. So I take them over to a guy. He had them for a year, never did anything. He gave me his price. So it's not like I beat him up and it was too cheap. He just never got around to doing it. So I finally got the doors back, took them to a friend of mine who I really wanted to have them done anyway. So the doors are now in the front of our building in a raised oak foyer. And the doors, I had to have 2 tools made to replicate the molding on some of the trim on some of the doors. So the doors in the front facade cost about $15,000 to have those doors redone. They have the interior, and the leaded glass was re-leaded. I had that all disassembled, re-leaded, put back in. It's protected now with tempered glass on the front and the back. So that is the original door to the society that was built, started in 1907, finished in 1912. Fascinating story that goes with that too. So the very first meeting we had here was a March meeting. There was another meeting where members would join. This is one of the things that I love about the society, the history. So George Boyd, you've probably interviewed him. His father, years and years ago, painted St. Andrew's Hall at no charge so that George could get married in St. Andrew's Hall. So fast forward to the first meeting we're having here. It's an initiation meeting. What George doesn't know is his son was coming in from California. We held a secret vote because George's son wanted to join the society. George's father was a life member. George was currently a life member. So his son came in from California, and during our membership process, we asked everybody to please get up and go into the back room where we're sitting right now and wait, and we discuss the new members and we vote on them there. Well, as soon as I made that announcement as president, George's son went to get up, and George reached out, put his hand on his arm, said, "Well, you're not supposed to go anywhere." He winks at him, he says, "Yes, I am, Dad." George started crying, and I'm losing it right now. But to initiate George's son in, and George to see that, was really a powerful moment for a lot of people. George is a very, very beloved member of the organization. So to swear his son in, and hopefully his son will be around long enough to become a life member down the road. To have generations like that, that's what the society means to a lot of us. Usually if you join an organization like this, you're very family driven or very family oriented. And I think a lot of us are. So there's special moments like that that don't happen very often. But when they do, they're unforgettable. They are absolutely unforgettable. And what else was neat that night, I was able to tell every member that thousands of members for almost 100 years have passed through those same doors that they did tonight. So I think that was really cool. And that's something I always try to play up or to acknowledge or to keep in the forefront, the history of this organization. We actually have the original handwritten minutes from 1849. And we have minutes that carry all the way through the Civil War. So you're reading about people who are joining while our country is being torn apart with the Civil War. St. Andrew's Society is going strong and growing and doing things. Immigrating Scots, because that was our original goal when the organization was founded, was to help immigrating Scots. It's very neat to see those kind of things, to know that's how long it's been around, to know that then my hope is it'll still be here for another 100 years, and maybe my great-grandchildren are going to say, that was my dad. There's his signature signing into the book. I think there's maybe 3 total books over all these 100 years of everybody signing in and becoming a member. So it's really, to me, fascinating to look back and see those things. And then I was blessed to be a part of something where I've now affected Michigan's history with the Michigan tartan. When I first became president, past President Bill Kincaid had forwarded me an email from an artisan weaver. Her name is Katie Meek. She's up in Alpena, Michigan. She wanted to weave a tartan for Michigan, and she wanted our input as a Scottish society. And there's 3 or 4 Scottish societies throughout Michigan, and she wanted all of our input. And I kind of grabbed the bull by the horns and ran with it, and we developed a tartan. My wife and I went several times to Lansing. Other members went to Lansing to testify in front of various committees, and you watch how the politics unfold. Our economy was struggling in those days, and people weren't on board what they considered to be a frivolous piece of legislation. It literally would cost nobody anything. It was just a matter of saying, yes, we have acknowledged this as an official tartan. So we played the politics for 5 years. Just as my 5th term was concluding, at that time, John Cherry just joined the organization. He was the sitting lieutenant governor. And he was running for governor because the current governor, Jennifer Granholm, was term limited out. So she was out of the picture. Well, at some point, John Cherry had decided to not run. He withdrew himself from running for governor. And that's when I thought to myself, well, there's no political fallout now. So there's several ways to get a tartan approved. One is have the legislature vote and approve it that way. Another one is by proclamation. So I contacted John. I said, John, can you approach the governor and see if we can get this tartan proclaimed? Again, I knew there was no political fallout for everybody. He was done. She was done. And so he approached her, and they agreed to do it. He had the attorneys look it over in Lansing, and everything was fine, and everything was approved, and we got it proclaimed. So that was a very, very neat thing. So it's kind of neat to have a little bit of a fingerprint on some Michigan history that I can proudly be a part of by having an official Michigan tartan. Just prior to that, we were acknowledged as the oldest benevolent society in Michigan, and it's a privilege to get piped into a room. It's a great honor. Well, I got piped into the Michigan Senate, and I was allowed to give a speech to the Michigan Senate. So I gave a speech about how Scottish Michigan really is, and people don't realize it. There's a statue on the Capitol grounds of a Scotsman. And I joked with them because we had the pending legislation of the Michigan tartan. And I said, every time you vote on any given legislation, if you vote in the affirmative, you're a little bit Scottish because you're saying aye. So I got a nice little laugh out of the room. And as I was telling you prior to the interview starting, there's a lot of, when I first became president, I realized I had to do a lot of public speaking. Most people, and I was one of them, very nervous about that. A lot of sleepless nights until I got comfortable and used to it. Well, then when I had to go to the Michigan Senate and give my speech, I wasn't nervous. And I'm thinking, I should be nervous. I'm speaking to professional speakers. I should be nervous. So I got nervous because I wasn't nervous. But it was fine. It was again, quite an honor to be able to do that. Our full pipe band came in. We had just about the upper gallery in the chambers full of St. Andrews members. We literally rented a big bus and bussed everybody down there who wanted to watch it and be a part of it. So it was pretty neat. So we were proclaimed in both the House and the Senate, acknowledging our efforts in Michigan since 1849.
Can you talk a little bit about the colors of the Michigan tartan, how it reflects the state?
I can, yes. It has a red line in it, which is for the robin's redbreast, our state bird. It has a total of 5 colors, and that signifies the Great Lakes. The primary colors, it has beige, which is for our sandy beaches, because we have the most coastline of any state in the continental United States. And it has a lot of green for the forest, blue for the Great Lakes. So it really reflects Michigan quite well. It's neat every time I see it, because obviously it's very recognizable to me. I mean, even my own tartan, they're so similar to other clans that you're never sure. Is that a Leslie or is that McKinnon? So, but this one is very recognizable, and I take a great deal of pride every time I see somebody wear it. One of the local pipe bands was considering switching over to the Michigan tartan for their official uniform. I don't know if they'll ever do it or not, but that would be quite something if they did. Yeah, so that was pretty neat to do that. And the artist actually wove me a scarf, which she stitched in her signature as a thank you for that. So that was very nice. Very
a lot
nice.
of tradition.
Absolutely.
I guess looking back a little bit at tradition, what traditions has the society hung on to quite well that you like? Maybe what are some traditions that the society no longer has that you think it would have been a good idea to keep those?
When the society first formed, it was very Masonic in tradition, very stuffed shirt, if you will, very procedural as how you did anything. You would walk station to station when you were initiated to the various officers in the organization. Fast forward to today, it's very, very casual. I'd like to see us get back to a little bit more structure for things like that. I think it adds a little bit to the organization. A little mystique there is always good. The casual is good from another standpoint, that everybody always feels very welcome here. They always have, but it's even more welcoming now. And I give a great deal of credit to one of my successors, Mike Gordon. He did a great job. He, in fact, just concluded his 6th and final term this year, so we have a current new president. And she'll do a great job, I'm sure. But I think we should strike a better balance between the old stuffed shirt and the new ultra casual. I think there's a balance that I would prefer to see back in there. We've done a lot of little things, like whenever past presidents would come to meetings, they would always get a trio of flags put in front of them, acknowledging them. It's especially helpful when new members are there for their first times. They can seek us out and get a lot of information from us if they have any questions. Because that's what we're there to do, is to help. When I was president, I always tried to acknowledge the past presidents. I actually had what's called a bullion patch created that we all have. I don't know if they have any more and are continuing to pass them out, but it's a patch that you pin on your coat acknowledging that you were past president. So things like that, because there's a lot that goes into it. And my wife was, Mary David, was my absolute right-hand gal. She made me look good is what she did. But we literally would put in, it seemed like 40 hours a week into these meetings, and we did it all that night after work and put together the events. Started a chili cook-off, which still goes to this day. I've never won that yet, though. I don't know what it is. I've just never won.
And my wife, Shelby Roars, won it twice.
Oh, okay. Well, Frank Hasse, rest his soul, he was undefeated. He never lost. Every time he put his chili up, he never lost. I was tempted to ask Kathy, his wife, for his recipe and make it and see if I'd win that way, but I don't know.
Let me ask you about the games. Share some thoughts about those days and thoughts in regard to what you see at the Green Mead Center.
Yeah, I've only attended the games a couple times, at the fort, so I don't have a lot of memories of them. I did like being in the historic setting of the fort for the games. That was nice. Green Mead games. I've been to a few games throughout our state. From what I see, most games other than ours focus in on an aspect of the games. So, for example, Grandfather Mountain, they're all about the clans. Their big event, which has got to be just stunning, is they come down the mountain in a torch-lit walk. And that's just got to be breathtaking to watch that happen. Our games, we focus on everything. We have very large dance competition. We have a very large amateur and professional heavy athletic. We get world-class heavy athletes in here. We have a very large clan area, so we focus in on every aspect of Scottish history, genealogy. We have all of these things. We have what we call a wee bairns area, and that's for the kids. Okay, small kids. Bairns is child. It's wee, small kids. So anyway, we give them passports. And they can go around and they get all their passports stamped, and then they get a little treat. So it gets them around the entire games. They're celebrated at opening ceremonies when they march around the main field, and then the clans come out around main field. So our games, we celebrate everything about Scottish life. We try to be very careful with even vendors that we bring in. We don't want 40 t-shirt vendors in there. It just cheapens the game. So we try to be pretty careful with all of that. And it's amazing. We literally move a city into Livonia for a weekend. We have anywhere between 8,000 and 12,000 people come out. The year we had 12,000 when the movie Braveheart came out. Wonder why? Everybody wanted to be Scottish then. It's an amazing event. We have people work year-round on it. It literally, month after the games, there's a break, but then they get right back into it. It takes a tremendous amount of planning to put it all together, and a lot of people work very, very hard to put that together. It's incredible, and it's mostly done with volunteers. So it's a challenge, and it's our biggest moneymaker.
Do you find that there's great camaraderie amongst the volunteers, not only at the games, but here at the St. Andrews Kilgore Center in general?
Absolutely, yeah. People, I think, and it's the reason I joined, and I suspect it's the reason that most join. You get to a point in your life where you want to do something for somebody else, where you want to give back. And I joined an organization that built houses and didn't care for that. And then my wife joined here, I joined, and we just really liked it. The people were extremely welcoming, very supportive, answer any question. They'll go out of their way for you. The members, we take care of each other. Very, very good friendships a result of joining this organization. No regrets whatsoever. Anybody should join.
You mentioned about your daughter learning Highland dance. Tell us a little bit about that, but also why is it important today for younger families to be involved with maybe the St. Andrews Society if they're Scottish? Why is this important?
I think it's very grounding to be a part of that. I think there's, to use a military term, there's a esprit de corps. When you identify with your heritage, you start to take on the better aspects of that. You start to emulate what you like best about your culture that you're involving yourself in. St. Andrews, the Scottish people have a reputation of being very cheap. Well, that's the furthest thing from the truth. They're extraordinarily generous people. In fact, I was doing some research, and they said literally that the word welcome is attributed to the Scots. Now, not in the same way that you and I use it. It was a statement. It wasn't a greeting. So in the Highlands, and the foul weather would come up, they would state to you, well, come. And they would take you and feed you and house you and get you through the storm and then send you on your way. Everybody knows what the cairns are, the stacked stones. Well, a lot of them actually have some supplies in them, some food. If you get caught out on the heather, as they say, then there's something there for you. You start to appreciate your heritage in that way. So when you get in, you get past the joking of the cheap Scots and all that other stuff, and then you realize you start to emulate that behavior. You want to do more. You want to do more. You want to give more, teach more. It's fascinating to you learn almost by osmosis hanging around in the group, because nobody seems to talk directly about Scottish things, but you learn a ton of things, okay? Scotch tape. Everyone's heard of Scotch tape. Do you know how it got its name? When it first came out, it had hardly any glue on it. So they blamed the Scots for being cheap and not putting enough glue on it, Scotch tape. So you get things like that. I always like to tell the joke, here's a story that can get you a free drink at a bar, okay? How they determined how many holes are on a golf course. They had a shot per hole. Now, if you're really lucky, the bartender will chime in at that point that there's 22 shots in a bottle. And you would say you are correct. The Royal and Ancient St. Andrews Golf Course originally had 22 holes. So you can get your free drink that way. So you learn a lot of these things just by being around other people in casual conversations and things like that. And again, the friendships are lifelong. And we help each other. And I mean, not just with our charitable giving and things of that nature. We support each other in our business endeavors. It's a really wonderful thing.
So your daughter is dancing.
She's actually my granddaughter, yes.
Granddaughter.
Yes, and here's back to the heritage thing. This is very ironic. I told you the story about how my wife's grandmother said any little Scottish girl can do a fling. Well, we all know that's not true. It's very physically demanding. Anyway, now my granddaughter has never met my wife's grandmother. She passed away quite a while ago. And she'll say things like, wouldn't your grandma be proud, as she finishes a competition. She doesn't even know her, but it means something to her now. And to watch my granddaughter go from a shy little girl to a confident young lady, she's only 10, but she's older. She started when she was 5. It's just the transformation is amazing. And I was just talking to some dancers here today that the dancers who compete, they're not competing against each other. You're really competing against just yourself because the judge is watching just you. So it's a very supportive group. Kids are not mad at anybody if anybody else does better or gets the medal or gets the ribbon or what have you. They're very supportive, and it's fascinating to watch it, and it's wonderful to see it.
Sports are good, but basketball, baseball, football, whatever the case might be, you're not going to play that much or do those things too much when you're 30, 40, or 50. Now, your granddaughter someday will be too old to dance, but she'll always have that love of her Scottish heritage in her heart.
Correct. As I said, talking to my wife about my wife's grandmother, you can tell it's in her soul now. It's in her soul now that she's Scottish and she loves it. You know, when I see my grandkids and their grandsons in their kilts, even when they're infants, we've got an infant kilt for them. And to watch them go with that, it does my heart proud.
Just real quick, if you can, there's some pretty fascinating pictures out there of old society members from, 60, 70 years ago. Mm-hmm. A couple of other pictures, if you could just kind of pull off a visual depiction of those.
Oh, absolutely. Those are pictures. There's one in there that always catches my attention because today the heavy athletes are big young men, big, strong, 300-pound young men. Well, there's a picture in there, I believe it's from 1927, of what we called our picnic. We didn't really call it the games then, but they did occur. And there's a gray-haired fella lifting the caber. For those of you listening who doesn't know what a caber is, it's the Gaelic word for tree. That's the telephone pole that we like to throw around. And he's a gray-haired guy, and he's doing that. So Scots are tough people. I just find it funny to see these big guys today, and then back in the day, it was just, hey, Dad, you going to go throw the caber this week? Yep, I am. And they would do it. Yeah, it was fascinating. There's another fascinating story from the games for those not familiar with the farmer's walk. What that is you pick up 200 pounds in one hand, another 200 pounds in the other hand, and you walk. Who goes the farthest wins. Well, one year, I think it was 96, we had an amateur come on, did the farmer's walk, and he walked almost 500 feet, carrying 400 pounds. And he won, of course. He won that year, But the games are pretty impressive, all things told.
What would you say to younger adults that are maybe thinking about joining the society, or maybe for somebody that just started their family, their children are now 4, 5, 6 years of age, maybe they're members, but they're not real active yet? What would you tell them about becoming engaged with the society?
It's grounding. Again, you realize what your heritage is and you learn from it, you grow from it, and you become it. You cannot help when you're submersing yourself in all things Scottish to not become more Scottish or not to have the thought process come through and start to become you. And I think it's very grounding. Again, it's a very family-driven organization. We're all about that. And so for your kids to learn that, they identify that. And I think that helps shape them. I think it's a good lesson for children to see their parents giving and doing for others. And it's a great lesson for them to learn. And then they'll move on and become that as well. And for me to think that maybe down the line that my grandkids will be active members here, I would love it. I would love to see it. Maybe one of them will become and hold an office. I don't know how many times that's occurred over the years of the society, but I've got to believe it's happened once, that somebody's done it. Somebody's followed in Dad's footsteps or Mom's footsteps and held office.
This presentation of the St. Andrews Society of Detroit's Oral History Project was produced by Van Rohr for the St. Andrews Society of Detroit's Library Committee under the direction of Dennis Clemens, current chairperson, and Shelby Brown Rohr, current St. Andrews Society of Detroit's communication director. This project celebrates the 169th year of the St. Andrews Society of Detroit. Salante.